Hey, what's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and today we're taking a look at the Corgi Pup by Vosteed, and this particular model has Rafir Noble scales, which is a Going Gear exclusive, and I did get this through the Going Gear EDC Club subscription a couple months back. Now, if you're not subscribed, they do sell this on their website as well. At the time of recording, they still have about 50 in stock, so if you wanted to pick one up, you can do so for $69. Pretty nice price overall, but $10 more than the base model. So if you aren't super keen on the Rafir Noble scales, or maybe you just prefer some of the other options, you can get those for about $10 less. So I'll link to both options in the description of this video. Now, the Corgi Pup is a miniature version of the Vosteed Corgi. So before we get too far, I did want to do a quick size comparison between the two. So we'll get the pup down on the table. Grab my OG Corgi. You can see it has the black micarta, same symmetrical design overall, just a bit larger, and I'll do my best to line the two up butt to butt so we can see that difference. So in terms of overall length, we're looking at a difference of about 1.5 inches, which doesn't sound like a ton, but it does end up being quite a big difference in both the handle and the blade in terms of the feeling of the two knives. So if you prefer larger knives, you may want to go with the Corgi. I would say that this is still a medium-sized knife. It just looks large in comparison to the Pup, which is a very small knife. We can also take a look at the two in the closed position to see what that looks like, and we'll see kind of the same thing, about 3/4 inch in difference in the closed position, maybe a little bit less, but definitely more than 1/2 inch. And so there's a much smaller footprint in that Pup than the Corgi, but both are a really great size. Now, the Corgi overall is only 5.93 inches, so I know that's going to be on the smaller side for some people. We do still get 3.56 inches in the handle, which is nice, because usually with the 3.5 inch handle, if there's no flipper tab or anything like that in the way, I can get a full 4-finger grip on it, and that's the case here as well. It's definitely on the tighter side in terms of my grip, but it's very comfortable, no hot spots whatsoever, feels great in hand. So very happy with that. Now, that does mean that we're giving up some blade length here at only 2.37 inches. Nice drop point style blade, flat grind on there, 14C28N, just like the original base model, so all of that's going to be identical. Really happy with that as well. Now, one thing where the size may be a hindrance is in terms of the deployment. So super symmetrical design, meaning that we get both a front flipper and a back flipper here. Back flipper has plenty of access. Both of them have jimping on both sides, so plenty of access. Nice detent, really smooth action on there. It is on cage ceramic ball bearings, so that action is extremely smooth. Where that size comes into play is with the front flipper. Only on occasion, if I'm conscious about where I'm placing my fingers, no problem, very easy to deploy with that front flipper. However, every once in a while, I just grab onto it, I'm not paying attention, I go to flip it open with the front flipper, and that flipper runs into my index finger. And so I have to be very careful if I'm using the front flipper to grab just a little bit lower so I know that I'm out of the way, and then it's no problem. Now, not that big of a hindrance, but I never run into that issue with the full-size Corgi, so worth bringing up for sure. Otherwise, the action on this is great. You can also use that Trek lock for deployment, and worth noting that Trek lock is a patented or patent pending lock for Vosteed, so it's not your typical button lock. It functions just like a button lock from the exterior. It looks just like a button lock, but on the interior it is slightly different, so worth pointing out. Really nice texturing on there, so easy to get a grip on that button. Very ambidextrous as well. You can use it for both deployment and disengaging that lock, which is nice. Really easy to use. This is a super fidgety and fun knife, great action on it, and the button's fairly good. There is just a hair of stick on there, but that was the case with my original Corgi, and it worked itself out as it broke in, and so I'd imagine that this will get there eventually. Although I have had this for a while and have fidgeted it with it quite a bit, I do think that will still eventually break in because it has improved since I got it. Now, overall, very symmetrical design, especially in that closed position, as I alluded to. So it's not just the flipper tabs. We have our button placement in the center. good for both left or right hand carry. Our pocket clip is ambidextrous tip up carry. You can see it's not ultra deep carry, and that's kind of a victim of the symmetry. They didn't want to put a body screw kind of along the backside here out of the way so that they can scoot that all the way to the top. So they place that right in the center so it's identical on both sides, but that does mean our pocket clip sits about 1/4 inch below that deep carry position. Otherwise, the pocket clip is fine. It does have their logo on it, which I'm not always a huge fan of. I don't mind it so much. It doesn't scream this is a knife or anything. It just kind of looks like a chess piece, and so that's fine. But they do plug up the opposite side, which is nice. I also really like how they did the lanyard hole placement. So instead of a lanyard hole, which would again take away from the symmetry, they just put it on this pin in the back. We have a back spacer back here where that body screw is going into, and the lanyard just goes around that pin, and that's going to keep it nice and out of the path of the blade when it's closing. It's so nice placement on the lanyard hole, but also if you don't have one, you really just forget it even exists. It's out of the way and just, yeah, kind of in a nice place overall. I really dig these Raffier Noble composite handles. They're somewhat translucent, which isn't always obvious, but sometimes in the sunlight you can see the kind of weight saving on the liners. There's 3 holes drilled in there, so if you're in a bright sunny day, you can see through that a little bit, especially when the blade is open, which is really nice. And there's some browns in there as well as grays and silvers. So just kind of a cool looking pattern overall. It feels like G10. I don't know about weight wise. This is a little bit on the heavier side for its size at 2.8 ounces. Still an ultra light knife, but if you're looking at the blade length to weight ratio that people like to compare, it's heavy in that regard, but it really doesn't feel heavy in hand or in pocket. Good action on here, like I mentioned. There is just a tiny bit of stick compared to my Corgi, but that's going away as well. This is a fun knife. I will say this is probably one of the few times where I prefer the larger version a little bit over the smaller version. And again, that's just because I don't have to think about where my grip is. I can loosen up my grip and still keep all 4 fingers, whereas with this one, I have to make sure I stay in that tight grip or my pinky falls off the end. And so I do still slightly prefer the Corgi, but both are really great knives, and depending on what you're looking for, can't really go wrong with either. But again, I'll link to both the OG version, or actually the base model of this version, and this Raffier Noble exclusive version. I guess I'll link to the OG version as well down in the description in case you want that one. But let me know what you think of this down in the comments below. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, or joining the channel as a member. All help the channel out a ton, and as always, hope you have a great one. Take care.